I didn't discover my partner's past all at once. It started with a detail that shouldn't have mattered, something so small I almost missed it. The kind of thing you notice, dismiss, and then think about again much later, when it has already rooted itself inside you. For a long time, our life looked ordinary in the best possible way. We had routines, shared jokes, quiet evenings where nothing dramatic happened and nothing felt wrong. I trusted that calm. I believed it meant we were doing something right. The first crack appeared during a casual conversation. They mentioned a job they'd supposedly had years ago, but the dates didn't line up with a story I remembered clearly. I laughed it off. People forget details. Memory isn't perfect. I told myself I was being ridiculous for even noticing. But the feeling didn't leave. It sat there, low and persistent, like background noise you only hear once everything else goes quiet. After that, small inconsistencies began to stack, places they claimed to have lived that never came up before. Friends who existed only in passing, never in photos, never in messages. Each detail on its own meant nothing. Together, they formed an outline of something unfinished. I didn't confront them. I didn't even ask questions. I convinced myself that trust meant not digging, that love meant allowing gaps. I was proud of how mature I thought I was being. They sensed the shift before I admitted it to myself. Suddenly, there was more affection, more reassurance. Stories told with extra detail, as if trying to sound convincing rather than true. I noticed how carefully certain topics were avoided, how quickly conversations changed direction. The moment that finally unsettled me wasn't dramatic. I saw their reaction when an old name came up unexpectedly. Just a pause, half a second too long, but it landed heavy. Something in them closed, like a door quietly locked. I told myself again that it was nothing, that I was projecting, that my own fears were shaping reality. Self-gaslighting became easier than admitting doubt. Still, patterns repeated. The same questions deflected. The same years blurred. The same defensiveness framed as exhaustion. I began replaying conversations in my head, listening for what wasn't said. I started looking, not because I wanted answers, but because not knowing had become unbearable. I searched carefully, almost apologetically, like I was already ashamed of what I might find. What I uncovered at first felt harmless, a partial truth, a version of their past that explained some gaps but raised new ones. They admitted to leaving something behind, a relationship, a life choice they weren't proud of. It sounded honest. It almost worked. But it wasn't the whole story. I could feel it. Truth doesn't come with that much editing. The full discovery arrived quietly, late at night, when I followed a trail I hadn't planned to find. It revealed a past that wasn't just omitted, but deliberately buried. A former identity. Years lived under different circumstances. People who had known a version of my partner I had never met. I didn't panic. I didn't cry. I felt numb, like my mind refused to react before understanding the damage. When I confronted them, the conversation fractured immediately. Denial softened into explanations. Explanations turned into justifications. They said they were protecting me, protecting us, that the past didn't matter anymore, but it mattered because it changed everything that came after. I replayed our entire relationship through this new lens. Moments of hesitation now made sense. Emotional distance had context. Even the love felt altered, like it had been built around something carefully hidden. We didn't end things right away. We existed in a strange suspension, sharing space but not reality. Silence replaced intimacy. Trust didn't shatter loudly. It eroded. Now, I live with the knowledge instead of closure. I don't hate them. I don't fully know them either. The hardest part isn't what they hid. It's realizing that love can survive lies for a long time, but it never survives the moment you finally see the shape of the truth. Time has a way of flattening emotions, but it sharpened my awareness instead. I began noticing how carefully I measured my words around them, how every conversation felt like walking across thin ice. Even mundane questions carried weight now. Even silence felt deliberate. Friends would ask how we were doing, and I learned how to answer without lying and without telling the truth. I mastered the language of avoidance. It matched theirs more than I wanted to admit. There were moments when I almost preferred the ignorance I had lived in before. At least then my memories were intact. Now every happy recollection arrived with an asterisk. Every laugh echoed with something unresolved. They tried to move forward, as if revelation alone was enough. As if naming the past erased it. I watched how easily they stepped into the present, while I remained stuck, reprocessing the past, again and again. Sleep became unreliable. My mind would replay scenes, testing them against what I knew now. The way they hesitated before answering. The way certain stories were told too smoothly. I wondered how much effort it had taken to maintain that version of themselves, and whether any of it had been real. I realized trust doesn't disappear in a single moment. It thins, it stretches. It becomes fragile long before it breaks, and once you notice that fragility, you can't unsee it. We talked less. When we did, it felt performative. Careful. As if both of us were afraid of saying the wrong thing and uncovering more damage than we could handle. Eventually, the future stopped feeling like something we were building together. It became an abstract idea, distant and unclear. Plans felt premature. Promises felt irresponsible. I stopped asking questions, not because I had found peace, but because I understood there were answers I didn't want to carry. There are days when they look at me the same way they always did, and I wonder if they believe nothing fundamental has changed. I don't correct them. I don't know how. Living with the truth doesn't feel dramatic. It feels quiet, heavy, like carrying a weight no one else can see. I learned that knowing someone isn't about time spent together. It's about what they choose to share and what they decide you're better off never seeing. I still think about who I was before I knew, how easily I trusted, how confidently I believed love was enough. Now I understand that love without truth doesn't collapse immediately. It reshapes you slowly, until one day you realize you're standing inside a version of your life that no longer feels like home. And that realization stays with you, long after everything else has gone silent. Sometimes I imagine what would have happened if I had never looked. If I had accepted the gaps as personality quirks instead of warning signs. That version of me still exists somewhere, unaware, intact. But awareness doesn't reverse itself. Once the truth settles in, it changes the way you listen, the way you remember, the way you love. I don't share this story to accuse or to absolve. I share it because living beside a secret teaches you something unsettling about intimacy. That closeness can exist alongside distance. That honesty can be selective and still convincing. The past they hid didn't disappear when it was revealed. It moved in with us. It sat quietly in the room, present even when unspoken. Some nights, I lie awake, wondering which parts of our relationship were genuine and which were carefully constructed. There's no clear line between the two. That uncertainty is its own kind of loss. I've learned to function without resolution, to accept that some questions won't be answered in a way that brings relief. Understanding doesn't always heal. What remains is this awareness. You can love someone deeply and still never fully know them. And once you realize that, love becomes something quieter, heavier, and far more complicated than it ever was before. I don't know what happens next for us. The story doesn't resolve neatly. It just continues, altered. We move through days that look normal to everyone else, while something essential remains unsettled. There's a specific loneliness that comes from sharing your life with someone who knows your truth while guarding their own. It's not loud. It's persistent. I used to think love was built on shared experiences. Now I know it's built on shared reality. And when those realities don't fully overlap, something always drifts apart. This isn't a story about betrayal in the traditional sense. It's about omission, about choosing silence, about deciding someone doesn't deserve the full context of who you are. I carry that knowledge with me now, not as anger, but as awareness. And awareness changes everything, even when nothing else seems to. That's the part no one warns you about. The way truth doesn't just reveal the past. It quietly rewrites who you become afterward. I don't know if this makes me wiser or just more careful. All I know is that some loves end loudly, and some fade into something unrecognizable without ever officially ending. This was the latter. I move through the world differently now, paying attention to what people leave unsaid. I notice pauses. I notice edits. I notice the stories people tell themselves to stay comfortable. And once you notice those things, you can't stop seeing them. Nothing about this feels dramatic enough to explain. It just feels permanent, like a door that closed so quietly no one noticed until the room felt colder. That's what living with the truth is like. Not explosive, just irreversible. It changes you quietly, and by the time you realize it has, there's no version of yourself left to return to. That's the part I'm still learning to live with. It never really leaves. Ever.